Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I will be discussing how I would adapt the Runelords series into a visual format. Specifically today, I'm going to be talking about the first 4 books, which forms an arc, how I would adapt that, including the book The Runelords, Brotherhood of the Wolf, Wizardborn, and The Lair of Bones. Now, to give some context, if you don't know, the Runelords so far is an 8-book series, although the author says he's working on a 9th and final book to wrap it all up, but it's an 8-book series with 2 main arcs in this world where there are different magic systems, including the Runelords, including the Brotherhood of the Wolf, including these wizards, all these groups, and it's about the political power struggles as well as the magical struggles and the dealings with the magic of the earth and the magic of stuff that is not from earth and all that stuff. It's a very complex and well-done magic system. It is my personal favorite magic system of any book series I've read in fantasy. However, today I'm not talking about the magic system necessarily. I am focusing on how I would adapt this into a visual format. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about television. I believe that this book series would adapt really well into television, a la something like the Game of Thrones or The Wheel of Time. Now, I should preface this by saying this series is nowhere near as popular as those 2 series and does not have the same type of dedicated fan base that the others have. I know there are people who love the series, including me, huge fan of the series. I've loved every book in this series, specifically the first 3 are some of my favorite books of fantasy. But you have to admit, it does not have the same level of dedication that, say, Game of Thrones had even before its show came out, or Wheel of Time has had, or the Cosmere has had. It's kind of fallen and faded into obscurity. There haven't been many reprintings in recent years. There hasn't been a lot of buzz about this series. And so I think that actually would help an adaptation, because whenever you change something from the books, if it doesn't have quite the same dedicated reader base, it wouldn't pose as much of a problem. Whereas you see something with The Wheel of Time, which has made some major changes in the show, it has caused a lot of consternation among many of the fans, myself included. So I think that the changes they make would be more easily adaptable. But the first thing I'll say is that these books, the first 2 are a bit longer than the books 3 and 4, which are longer than books 5, 6, 7, and 8, which get shorter and shorter and shorter. I think that the first 2 books, including Runelords and Brotherhood of the Wolf, would make good 8-episode series. These books are shorter than Wheel of Time, so in Wheel of Time, they're doing the first season on 8 episodes, but I think that 8 episodes would give this series, each book, 8 episodes for the first book and 8 episodes to adapt the second book, would give the series enough time to fully tell the story that is in there and maybe add a thing or two to flush it out more, and it wouldn't require many cuts to the series. At the same time, I think that would give you enough time to start feeling connected to the characters. If you did fewer episodes, you wouldn't get quite as attached to the characters as you would, say, in 8 episodes, I think. So that is my first piece of evidence. The second is that I think there are 8 good stopping points within the first book and 8 good stopping points in the second book that you could cut it into episode length. And there are some great cliffhangers, there are some great moments, there's some great finales, some great penultimate moments that would just flow really well in a TV series. I also think that there are elements of this that would require a higher budget. For instance, in the Runelords, towards the beginning of the book and towards the end of the book, there are 2 battle sequences that I think would require a substantially decent budget for television. However, quite a lot of the rest of the book could be done on a smaller budget. Now, everything scales upward significantly in Brotherhood of the Wolf, and so this would require a high budget requirement. But the first book, I think, could do something to where Game of Thrones did in its first season, where there weren't many big battles and most action took place off screen. The Game of Thrones first season was mostly political in nature. And this, while it's a lot of walking, I think that a lot of the scenes could be done on sound stages. I think that you could easily adapt Castle Silveresta to be a good set, and that you'd get a lot of usage out of it as it's a major place in the book. I think that a lot of the smaller locations, the taverns, the wood scenes, all those events, and even the plains would be easy sets to either build or to go to if you're using location. And so I think that with the first book, you could do it on a $6, maybe $7 million budget, maybe $8. I'm not a huge expert on Hollywood budgets, but I try to keep up with how much each show is costing. But I don't think this first one, you'd have to break the bank and commit everything to it. And if it was a very successful first season, then you could devote more money into the second season, which is where a lot more character drama happens, which is where a lot more action happens, and which is where a lot of more new characters are introduced, which is why I think this could also be 8 episodes. And the third book, Wizardborn, is, in my opinion, the height of the series in a lot of ways, in a lot of individual moments. I think the first book is the best single book, but Wizardborn is when the series hits its highest moments, specifically with Marima. Marima's moment at the end of this book is one of my all-time favorite moments of fantasy. And I think that this would only have to be 6 episodes, and I think that it would tell a complete story, and it would leave it, there are 6 good markers in the book, and this one would require about the same level budget per episode as, say, a Brotherhood of the Wolf, around $10 million an episode, but it wouldn't require as many episodes in total, so the company wouldn't have to spend quite as much as a whole if the second season didn't perform as well as it needed to, but performed well enough to warrant a third. And I think that the action in this book is great. This is where the characters really are hit the hardest in their core of who they are and what they need to do. And so this book would really make a good fan base. And then you have the fourth book, which is The Lair of Bones, which is about the same length as Wizardborn. And this book is admittedly my least favorite of the 4, but I still think it's a good book and has a good ending. And I think that this book could be 6 episodes. It'd be much more action-packed. It would definitely have to be in the realm of a higher budget and would need a lot of action required by the director. But there are many scenes, particularly as one shown here, that occur underground. A high percentage of this book occurs underground, and as a result, I think that these sets would be much cheaper to build than, say, big castle sets, or, say, big plains battle sets, which there are battles here. Where you would come into trouble with all 3 of the last books, including Wizardborn and Brotherhood of the Wolf and Lair of Bones, is the evil creatures in these books would be very difficult to adapt. The Reavers. And I think that there's some artwork on the Runelords Facebook page that shows exactly how I envision a Reaver, and I think that it's very similar to the creature shown in Star Wars Episode 2 that is attacking Obi-Wan in the Genoshan battle sequence, but I think that Reavers would be a great visual medium, and they'd be difficult. You'd have to spend money on them, but I think it would be worth it for the fan base. Kind of like how in Wheel of Time you have the Trollocs, which they just nailed the look of the Trollocs, in my opinion. I think that would be the defining feature of this series. With regards to how I think it should be cast, obviously, you can't have all major actors for all the major characters because of many reasons. 1, it would be really expensive, and 2, maybe a main actor isn't necessarily required for what the scene calls for. Case in point, I think that if you're going to get a major actor to play a character in this book, in this series. I think that Binisman, the wizard, he has a kind of major role. He's throughout the series, but he's not a huge role, and I think that you could pay a very big-time major actor who's maybe a little bit older now, who I think could do a very good job with the role, and it would be expensive, but it wouldn't break the bank on that actor. Similarly, I think that the villain in this book, the series, Raj Aten, I think you need a very strong, powerful main actor to play that character. It needs, I think, to be someone who's young to middle age would play it well. You need someone who's fierce, who I would say at some points could be ferocious. I cannot remember his name now that I'm thinking of it, but the character, the actor who's in the new James Bond movie No Time to Die, who also Rami Malek, who was also in this biopic of a singer. I think Rami Malek could do a very good job pulling off Raj Aten. And he's a major actor that you could get. He was also in iRobot. Not iRobot. Was it iRobot? I don't remember. He's in a lot of stuff. But I think Rami Malek would be the perfect type of villain to play Raj Aten, have the same menacing quality. He doesn't necessarily have the physique of what I imagine Raj Aten to have. I imagine that Raj Aten was much more buff and muscular and tall, but I think that they could do some stuff to make Rami Malek fit that character. And then it comes to the main characters like Princess Aomi, Prince Gaborn, and Marima, and other characters that are involved. I think that you could get lesser-known actors for those roles, kind of like the main Game of Thrones actors for the kids, for the Stark children, was mostly lesser-known actors. I would keep the characters around their early to mid-20s. I would not necessarily get people who are older than that because the series is 4 seasons and this whole series takes place over the course of a couple days. And the second reason is because you need them to be old enough to be adults because certain adult things are happening in their lives that really wouldn't translate well as teenagers, but wouldn't translate well if they're in their 30s. So you need to get someone in their 20s, I imagine. And I don't know who I would necessarily cast in any of those major roles. One actor I think could do the job of Gaborn might be Will Poulter if he put on some muscle and if he put facial hair on him. I think he could do the role. I think that someone who could do a good Marima would be Caitlin Dever, perhaps. And then maybe someone like Borenson. Maybe get someone who's more middle-aged, who's you'd need a very. I'm talking about adding some more muscle to the guys. You'd have to get a very muscular guy to play him, and I don't know who that would be. And maybe that could get a mid-tier actor, maybe someone who's well-known but not necessarily a household name. He's one of those, it's that guy, that kind of actor. So I think that the acting wouldn't require a lot of costs. I don't think that the writing should require a lot of costs. You don't need to get a major writer to be part of this series because you already have the material right here for the series. It's a very easy to adapt material. There's good breaking points. There's good highs and lows for each episode for what it could be. So you don't need a good writer. So where I would spend the money, other than just the effects and the scenery, would be on a director. You get a good, solid director, someone who's maybe done television, maybe done some movies, someone who can solidly adapt this material visually, as long as they have a writer who will be faithful to the material. I think that there's types of material where you want to be more adapting to be your own spirit, your own envisioning, and then there's some where it's more directly what the book says. And I think that this series warrants more what the book says happens, and also I personally prefer that type of adaptation. A lot of people poo-poo on the Harry Potter, the first two Harry Potter films because of how closely they are to the original books. But I love the fact that they're that close, and I wish that the other films had done that more or less, except for some of the other stuff that happens. Anyway, so that's how I think the series. I think this would be a very good television series. The first two books, I think, would be good 8-episode seasons, and I think the second two books would be good 6-episode seasons. And so I think that this story as a whole would be very popular, and I think it would be good for people to be introduced into this beautiful world that is the Runelords. So, if you've read the Runelords, what do you think of my idea of an adaptation? Would you do a movie series instead? Would you do more or less episodes? How would you do it? Who would you cast as the main characters? Let me know down below in the comments. And if you haven't read this series, are you interested? Do you want to know more information? Leave a comment down below as well. Please subscribe to the channel to see more fantasy, sci-fi, tie-in fiction content. Please hit the notification bell. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.